Similarly to Sonic Advance 1 and 2, Advance 3 is a fast-paced 2D platformer. The player controls one of 5 characters simultaneously, with a second one as a sidekick. Alternately, a second player joins and one controls each character. The 2 characters run and jump through a series of 7 levels, destroying robots along the way. The player collects rings in levels and boss battles as a form of health. Upon being hit by an enemy or harmful obstacle, the player's rings will scatter and can be recollected. If a character takes damage while carrying no rings, they lose a life. The team will also lose a life if they drown underwater, get crushed by a moving object, fall into a bottomless pit, or exceed an act's 10-minute limit. Losing a life will make the team start over from the beginning of the act or from the last pass checkpoint. If all lives are lost, the player receives a game over. The levels contain features like vertical loops, springs, and rails that the player can grind on. Each level is divided into 3 acts, punctuated by a boss fight with Doctor Eggman at the end. All 3 acts, the boss fight, and 2 minigames that grant the player extra lives are bound by a hub world. Within each act, the player collects KO creatures. Finding 10 in all 3 acts in one zone grants the player access to a special stage where a Chaos Emerald can be found. Collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, which can be done after completion of the main campaign, allows the player to fight an extra final boss for the game's true ending. The player can select any 2-member permutation of its 5 playable characters: Sonic the Hedgehog, Tails, Amy Rose, Knuckles the Echidna, and Cream the Rabbit, provided the 2 desired characters have been unlocked. Only Sonic and Tails are available at the beginning, while the other 3 must be rescued from Eggman over the course of the game. Each character has a unique ability. Sonic can perform a spinning attack in midair, Tails can fly using his 2 tails as a propeller, Amy can smash enemies with her hammer, Knuckles can glide long distances and climb walls, and Cream can fly using her ears as wings and attack enemies with her KO friend, Cheese. The second player character can also give powers to the first by pressing the R button. For example, pressing and holding R, while Tails is the sidekick blasts both characters into the air. In addition, the second character will collect rings and destroy enemies the first has not. Outside the main game, there are 2 battle modes for 2 to 4 players, in which any of the characters can be selected: racing and KO collecting. Sonic Advance 3 received positive reviews from critics, with respective scores of 79% and 80% at review aggregators Metacritic and Game Rankings. GameSpot named it the Best Game Boy Advance Game of June 2004 and nominated it for the year-end Best Game Boy Advance Game and Best Platformer awards. It later won Handheld Game of the Year at the 2004 Golden Joystick Awards and sold over 100,000 copies in the United Kingdom alone. Critics gave mixed opinions to the team-up dynamic. Nish Marigos from OneUp.com celebrated that Sonic Team had finally come up with a way of introducing teamwork and variance between characters that doesn't overwhelm Sonic's bread and butter gameplay. Marigos singled this out as the main divider between Advance 3 and Sonic Heroes, a game that he found surprisingly linear in level design, considering that it, unlike Advance 3, was in 3D. Marigos, GameSpot's Frank Provo, IGN Craig Harris, and Game Informer's Lisa Mason appreciated the increase in replayability Sonic's friends brought. However, Mason, as well as reviewer Stardingo from GamePro, thought that they played too much like Sonic and did not add much to the experience. Daryl Vassar of GameSpy took a different point of criticism. He acknowledged the presence of genuinely different character abilities, but perceived that their only purpose was to find KO, whom he called pointless. Marigos noted that the mid-air trick system from Advance 2 was optional in Advance 3, but spoke positively about its usefulness in locating hidden areas. Harris argued that such varying team abilities contributed to occasional cheapness in the level design, because most of the characters have absolutely no defense when hopping off items like springboards. However, the gameplay was mostly well received otherwise. Vassar acclaimed the level design. He both called the levels enormous and fast, and praised the slower, smaller sections for keeping the levels distinct and adding short interludes to the constant running and loops. Harris also praised the clever level design. However, Mason found it simplistic, while Stardingo saw repetition in the typical formula. Marigos criticized the bipolar difficulty of the bosses and some minor control issues. Vassar, however, appreciated the return from Advance 2's running-based boss battles to more traditional ones. Further praise from Harris, conversely, went to the multiplayer mode and, along with Stardingo, to the presence of a hub world, which Harris and Stardingo thought gave the game structure. The game's aesthetics were also well received. Provo stated that in terms of graphics and sound, Sonic Advance 3 is on par with the best that companies like Nintendo and Konami have had to offer this year. He specifically complimented the character animations, simulations of underwater waves, and in-depth background effects. Vassar praised Advance 3 for continuing Advance 1 and 2's emulation of the colorful, angular, and stylized look of the original Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis, as well as its twangy, upbeat tunes. Stardingo thought similarly overall but criticized the garish themes of the level Toy Kingdom.